Well, I will give Howie Roseman some credit. He made some moves for us. We appreciate it.
He did, and he didn't wait till we were done with the podcast, which I think shows a lot of growth on his part.
Yeah, I think so. This is the Eaglet Podcast with Ruben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Yeah, the last time we talked to you guys, the Eagles roster was at 87. They had 3 spots, and now they're all full. The Eagles signed 3 players, or they're going to sign 3 players. The 2 most notable are obviously Nick Mullins and Richard Rodgers. So we know one of those guys very well and one of them a little bit. So we'll kind of go through what the signings mean, if we think it was wise or if we think there are better options. And then later on, we have some other stuff to get to. We want to talk a little bit about Jalen Reagor and social media in the NFL, which has kind of become a really big deal for him and some other players and really around the league. We want to go through some of our favorite position coaches ever and kind of talk a little bit about what it means to be a good position coach, because I think there's this idea that every coach in the NFL is good, and that's not necessarily the case. And I had put together a list of Eagles who I think have a chance to become Pro Bowlers this year. So we'll go through that list and I'll let you kind of rank them on who you think is closest to the farthest away. But let's start with Nick Mullins, because he is now, I guess, the 3rd string quarterback. Some people might argue maybe he should be the 2nd string, but based on the money they paid Joe Flacco, that's not the case. What'd you make of the Nick Mullins signing?
Well, hopefully he never has to play. Hopefully it never gets to that point. When you're talking about your 3rd quarterback, you're looking for? Ideally, I would like a younger guy. He's only 26, so he's not. It's like he's an older player, but he's a functional quarterback. I mean, we all remember how bad he was in that game against the Eagles. So I mean, that's he was pretty bad in that game. That was last year. It seems like a few years ago.
It was week 4, I think.
It was week 4. He threw a couple of picks. He was 18 for 26. So
that was the Alex Singleton pick 6.
That was and then he got benched. He got benched after that, and he ended up playing a bunch of games after that. He came back and he was okay. I mean, he had a passer rating in the 80s. So you're talking about a guy who started games in the league. He's played games. He's won some games. He's not a particularly good quarterback. At 26, he's probably not going to get any better. But if you'd rather, if you have to get through a game, you'd rather have him than Jamie Newman. I wonder if the plan all along wasn't to have Jamie Newman in the rookie camp and the mini camps or whatever you want to call them, and just see what he was all about, and then bring in a veteran. We might see him on the practice squad again. I don't know how bad he was. It wasn't open, but Mullins is, if you're looking for a 3rd string quarterback, you could do worse.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, he still has some tools. You're right. At 26, he's kind of like on the brink. He could get better, but I don't think he's ever going to be a starter in the league. He's a decent backup. He
started 19 games. He's
had that body of work.
Yeah. He actually wasn't bad as a rookie. I mean, he started 8 games, and
he was much better early, honestly.
Yeah. His very first start, he had 3 touchdowns and no picks, and 16 for 22 against the Raiders. Niners won 34-3. His first career start. It's one of the best starts ever by a rookie. In his first game, he had a passer. He'd never played before. He had a passer rating of 150. He was like the 2nd highest ever by a quarterback in his first career start, by a rookie in his first career start. But it was downhill from there.
Yeah, you set the bar too high. You're supposed to start off with the terrible game and get a little bit better. He was teammates with Quez Watkins at Southern Miss.
Yeah, I think that's big. I think that'll really shuffle the season odds when you go to the Vegas sports books.
Yeah. I don't know. I think ideally they would have found a developmental quarterback in a late round or undrafted to kind of bring up. But maybe they're looking at Mullins like, Flacco's older. We wanted him here for this year, but he's probably not going to be here next year. Maybe Mullins can be the backup next year, whether it's Hurts or whoever as the starter. And even if let's say Hurts doesn't work out this year and they go out and draft a quarterback, then I think there's a decent chance Hurts isn't even here next year. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but they probably look at Mullins as, hey, he's still young enough that we can teach him our system. He can be our backup quarterback going forward after this season.
Yeah, he gives you that flexibility where, I mean, I can't imagine he's ever going to be the guy. But if you have a young quarterback who you don't feel is quite ready, he could start you some games in that situation. He can come off the bench. He's a smart guy. I mean, he's got that, what you want from a backup, which is he's been a backup, he's not played. He's kind of used to that whole thing. He's not a guy who's going to be frustrated if he doesn't play for a year or whatever. He's probably just happy to be in the league. So, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, it's possible he could be number 2 next year. We just don't know who number 1. It could be Hurts. It could be someone else. This is what you get into when you don't really, have a quarterback. I mean, and they kind of do, but we don't know how good he is. Second round pick, everything's different. If he was a first round pick, we're not talking about Nick Mullins like this. So we'll see how it goes. It'll be fun watching him in the preseason. I mean, I think he's one of those guys who play really well in the preseason because, he's experienced, he started games, he's had success in the league, and he's going to be going up against, some real scrubs when he does get in. So he'll put up great numbers in the preseason. He'll be one of those guys that everyone's going to be like, oh, he should be starting.
I don't know if that's going to happen.
I will.
Do you think he's on the roster, or do you think they try to put him on the practice squad? Because that's a big question. They don't need to keep. I guess they'd have to worry about losing him, but he was available on June 14th. So
yeah, things change once the season starts. Teams need quarterbacks. I would guess he'd be on the roster, but everything's different these days. So, they who knows what's going to happen. I would think he'd be on the roster. I would think if you want that third string quarterback that bad, that you're not going to risk losing him, but we'll see.
Yeah, I go back to the draft, and I really thought they were going to take a quarterback at some point, like a late round developmental guy. And then they bring in Jamie Newman. They don't pay him any guaranteed money, which is, I mean, I know people were excited about Newman, but that's the thing with undrafted rookies. You follow the money, and it tells you a lot. So I was a little surprised they didn't throw some money, because I thought they were going to draft a quarterback, and then they didn't draft the quarterback. Then I thought, well, maybe they're going to throw some money at one of the undrafted guys, and that didn't happen either. I guess they just weren't really in love with the late round undrafted crop of quarterbacks this year.
Yeah. And, I think the way how he uses the roster, I mean, the practice squad is really not even a good name for it anymore, because it's more like a extension of the roster. So it could be a thing where they tell Nick Mullins, look, we'll put you on the practice squad. If another team tries to poach you, we'll put you on the roster. And kind of make an agreement with him. It's up to him. Those guys are technically free agents, so he could sign anywhere he wants at any point. You can protect some as well, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. He's one guy I'd look forward to seeing in the preseason, just because it's fun watching new quarterbacks.
Yeah, it is. And I think it looks like the practice squad rules are going to be the same this year. So a lot of flexibility. You have those options to bring guys up from the practice squad for games, the elevations, and they can probably work on something like that. And the Eagles we've seen it with quarterbacks before, with Sudfeld a few years ago when he was on their practice squad, and I think it was the Colts actually tried to go and get him, and it was old Colts staff. The Eagles elevated him, and he never left the roster at that point. It is like the Eagles and Niners traded Sudfeld for Mullins in a way.
It seems that way. I think the Eagles probably got the better of the deal.
I don't know. Jeff Lurie's like, how did we lose this one, Howie?
Yeah, he did complete 71% of his passes in that one game in 2017. So.
All right, how about Richard Rodgers? This is not a surprise at all. I think both of us kind of thought this was going to happen. I know on my my 53 man roster projection, I had him on there, and he wasn't even on the team yet. So this made too much sense not to happen.
I've been writing it every week, I think, in my 10 observations. In honor of Richard Rodgers, I have my list of the top 5 Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals. So is this a good time for that?
Yeah, you do that. I'm gonna run out to a Wawa real quick. You need
Could you
anything?
give me some wintergreen lifesavers?
Sure. Yeah.
I've got Sound of Music, The King and I, South Pacific, Flower Drum Song, and Allegro.
This is a real throwback to like early Eagle Eye days. The listeners who have been with us for a long time know my dislike of musicals.
Yeah, that's really surprising to me. I love musical theater. Didn't you do like musical theater at Cherokee? Weren't you like in the like
No,
what
just
were
say
you
it.
what were you in? Like
It's so stupid. Just stop singing and just tell me. Just say it. It's so it doesn't make any sense. They're like in a scene and then people just start saying. Just say what you have to say and let's move on.
but there's you get enjoyment out of the songs. That's the whole idea.
I don't.
You don't like music?
I don't like music in that context. Time and place. Just say what you have to say and let's get on with our lives.
You're evil.
All
You're
right.
like such a Grinch. Is there any is there any musical? Are there any musicals you like? I mean, what about like Disney musicals?
I mean, like I grew up like watching Disney movies and they have songs. I can deal with that.
Oh, so you like Disney, but not like Rogers.
Like cartoons, but like that I was a child too. So like yeah, I think like in a
What about
I
like
wouldn't
Andrew
go
Lloyd
to-
Webber stuff? That's like really like basic, like for someone like you to understand.
who's what's he do?
Andrew Lloyd Webber, like
Yeah.
Starlight Express and Cats and I mean, it's got a million. We saw Starlight Express in London when the Eagles were out there in '91. I mean, Phantom of the Opera. I mean, those are all Andrew Lloyd Webber. He kind of like took musicals and made them like really popular. Like hardcore music, musical fans look down on him.
I look down at them all. I'm an equal opportunity hater on musicals.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well,
You're not gonna get me here.
someday we're gonna go. We're gonna go up to Broadway. We're gonna go catch Rent or something. Have you seen Rent?
No,
At least
doesn't even not even on my radar.
it's a masterpiece. And it was written by a guy I went to high school with, John Larson, and we played in bands together and stuff. And the late John Larson.
Yeah.
You would love it. You probably love Rent, actually.
Not for me. Not for me. All right, Richard Rodgers. He's back. Is he tight end?
Do you have any issues with my top 5? Are you okay with it?
I would have moved the 4th up to 3 and 3 down to 4.
Okay. All right. Here's my Richard Rodgers stat. This is really kind of amazing because he's a guy that did not play a whole lot last year. He was only targeted 31 times and he caught 24 passes, which is a lot. From week 4 to week 11, which, that's kind of a good chunk of the season. And that incorporates the 5 games that Zach Ertz missed with the ankle injury, I guess it was. Richard Rodgers had the 3rd most 10-yard catches in the NFL among tight ends during that period.
Oh,
that's an 8-week. That's half the season. This year it would be 46% of the season, but he had only Kittle and Kelsey had more 10-yard catches than Richard Rodgers, and he was probably targeted like 20% of the time that they were. But I think that says a lot about just his ability to get down the field and make plays. He's got great hands. I've always liked him as a player. I mean, he's a guy that's caught 58 passes in a season a while ago with the Packers, and he kind of fell out of disfavor there. I mean, he doesn't block. He's not a guy who's going to give you much in the run game. But when you have Dallas Goedert, Richard Rodgers is a nice weapon. I'm surprised he was still on the street. We kept talking about him, and I'm maybe they had to deal with him that we won't sign you till after all the spring camp so you can just chill. But I'm glad he's back. I think he's a good player who situationally has a lot of value.
Yeah, he's had a really strange career because it got off to that great start in Green Bay. He was catching a lot of balls, and then you're right, he fell out of favor there. He came here and he had some success, and then he was like nowhere again. And last year, out of nowhere, he started making plays again. I think he can play. You know, was he 28, 29 now? So he's not a
28.
young kid. Yeah, but yeah, as a second, third tight end option, I like that a lot. You're right. He's not like a very good blocker. You're not going to ask him to stay in line and block for you, but you can do a lot worse when it comes to pass catching. And they have the Eagles right now. If Zach Ertz isn't here, which I think we all kind of still think is gonna happen at some point, you have Dallas Goedert, Richard Rodgers, and then a developmental guy, whether it's Jack Stoll or Tyree Jackson or Keem Butler, one of those guys. You can bring along, you can keep him on the practice squad. You can kind of elevate as you need. I think that's the way this is going to go.
Yeah, I mean, he played more than 3 snaps in just 3, 4, 5, in just 10 games last year, 9 games. So and he had 345 yards basically in just a little more than half a season. So I'm not going to project it and say he's going to have a 700-yard season, but especially if Ertz isn't here, which we kind of expect. I guess it's not a slam dunk yet, but we kind of anticipate it. He gives you a lot of the same things that a 30-year-old Zach Ertz does, as far as great hands, knows how to get open, and he can run. I mean, he can run like Goddard, and he can catch the ball like Ertz. He just doesn't block, and there might be a point of diminishing returns with him. I don't know, but I think with a young quarterback, having a sure-handed second tight end is really valuable.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, I don't know if they're going to be out of 12 as much as they were, when they had Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, but Sirianni is going to use 12 personnel. I think we can kind of piece that together based on his time in Indy and even with the tight ends here. I mean, I think Richard Rodgers is good enough to get on the field. And when you have that many question marks at receiver,
yeah,
we don't know. I mean, we think they're going to be good enough to be an 11 personnel team all the time, but if those young receivers don't come along the way you'd like them to, you might have to go to 12 personnel when you're trying to win games in the middle of the season. It might be your better personnel grouping at a time, And
it's important to remember that. I mean, Goddard's missed some time. He missed 5 games himself last year. If you don't have Ertz and Goddard gets hurt and Richard Rodgers isn't here, I mean, you've got nothing. And, we talked to Jason Michael about that. And he said, well, it's June and we have a lot of talented kids, but the reality is they don't have anybody anybody else has ever caught a pass. They got a bunch of developmental guys. And you talk about following the money with the undrafted guys. Jack Stoll I think he got a pretty good guarantee. But I think it was the biggest out of all the guys, right? Out of all the undrafted
Yeah, it was
guys.
well over $100,000.
It was like 120 grand, 125 grand. So that tells you they're, at least, it doesn't say he's going to make the team, but it does tell you they're at least serious about giving him a long look this summer. So if you have Goddard, Richard Rodgers, and Jack Stoll, I think you're in pretty good shape there.
Yeah, and this is a fun time because we get to bring up our old buddy Noah Togoa, Noah Tongiai from last year, who the Eagles really liked. They paid him a lot of money too, and they ended up losing him. He went to the Colts and played a little bit for them. So it shows you that this coaching staff will value an undrafted tight end and they'll play him. I think that's fair to say.
Chad Lewis, undrafted. I wonder. Yeah. I think he should have his name legally changed to Togoa.
Is that what you were thinking about?
Yeah.
I wonder if anyone's ever told him, like, these two idiots in Philly are your biggest fans and they will not say your name correctly.
He hates us. It's disrespectful. So what is the correct pronunciation?
Tongiai.
Tongiai. All right. I'm going to start. I think, because people get my name wrong all the time. I get Frank Rubin all the time.
Yeah.
So
it was tough when Ruben Randall was in town for 37 hours because he was UE Ruben, R-U-E, and you are, oh man, that's tough. You are R-E-U.
Yeah. I also caught as many passes as he did.
Yeah, he was not ready to play anymore when he got here. All right. Future Pro Bowlers. I have a list. And this is a good segue because Dallas Goedert tops the list. And these are players who I think have a legitimate shot this season to become a Pro Bowler. Last year, the Eagles had 3 Pro Bowlers, and they were all over 30. So it's about time they find some younger talent and guys who can kind of take that next step. And Miles Sanders is on this list. I know some people think he was a Pro Bowler last year. It was kind of tricky. Well, he did win some last year was weird because there wasn't an actual game. It was just a roster. And then there was like some kind of Madden vote to like vote him into the roster on the Madden game. And he won the vote along with Edwards-Helaire. But I don't think we can really consider him a Pro Bowler last year from a fan vote after the fact. So in any case, he didn't really play at a Pro Bowl level last year. He didn't put up the numbers. So he's on this list, and I don't consider him a Pro Bowler.
Who's the last Eagles first-time Pro Bowler?
Brandon Graham.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, I'm thinking younger guys,
Yeah, that was a unique case.
32-year-old first time. I mean, I guess
Lane
Lovato.
Oh, Rick Lovato, yeah.
But as far as position players, Lane's first Pro Bowl was the Super Bowl year, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Who's their last young Pro Bowler? Who's their last Pro Bowler?
Well, he was still pretty young then. He was in year 4
27. Then. He was in his 5th year.
Was he 5th year then?
Yeah, he came out. He was 13, right?
Oh yeah, you're right. 5th year.
I guess Carson.
Yeah, 2nd year.
Carson. Who's the last young defensive Pro Bowler? Probably Fletch. Fletch made it when he was 25 in 15.
Okay.
That was 6 years ago.
Yeah, so it's been a while.
They're due. And before that, oh my goodness. I'm just looking through the list. You know, all their Pro Bowlers have been. Before that, you got to probably go back to Trent Cole as far as defensive. Wow. Yeah, so they're due. So you got Goddard and Sanders.
Yeah, so those were the first 2 guys I put on the list. I think those are the easiest 2 to put on the list because I think they're both talented enough right now. Like if they played at the level they played at points in their career over a 17-game season, they're Pro Bowlers.
Right, agree.
Agree? Okay.
Yeah.
For both of those guys, a big part of it is just staying on the field.
Yeah.
They both struggled with injuries. The next one is Devontae Smith, and I know that's early for him, but he's talented. You know, there's a reason he was the 10th overall pick. There's a reason he won the Heisman. If he has a 1,000-yard season as a rookie, there's a chance.
Yeah, but everybody has a 1,000-yard season. I mean, there's going to be 20. I mean, that's 50. Do the math. 58 yards a game. Yeah. It's going to take. I think it's going to take 1,200 to get you to the Pro Bowl these days.
You might, but you also, if you have a real game this year, you have alternates who might make.
That's true. There were no alternates last year, which really cut down on the number of Pro Bowlers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And look, I know Pro Bowl is not the best gauge sometimes because it becomes a little bit of a popularity contest, but it's the best of what we have because the All Pro bar is just so high, you know. And that's why it means more. But it's also like, I'm not saying these guys are going to be All Pros because that's such a high bar to clear. I mean, you have to be the best.
I like the track metaphor though. As we go toward Meet of Champions in New Jersey on Saturday.
I apologize for that one, everyone. After Devontae, I put Jalen Hurts, who I have no idea, but if he's a dual threat, exciting player, he'll get fan votes.
Yeah,
but I have no idea. He's the true wild card of the team.
And I mean, that's the reality with quarterbacks is by January, if there is a game, assuming there is a game, which there will be, half the quarterbacks are going to be hurt. Half are going to drop out. You usually have like 10 Pro Bowl quarterbacks a year, 10 or 12. So if he plays the way he did in his 3 full games, the 3 games that he started and finished, he'll be a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, you might be right. Next one, Javon Hargrave, who I think is I feel like he's one of the more forgotten players on this team in general.
Javon who?
Yeah. And he's an older guy. I mean, this is year 6 in the league for him, and he hasn't made it yet. But playing next to Fletch, he's going to get one-on-ones, and he's good. I mean, we saw the talent once he figured out the scheme last year.
Took a
I
while.
know he has to kind of learn a new scheme, but this is going to be kind of in the middle of where he was in Pittsburgh and a little closer to where he was last year. And I think he's a pretty good player.
Yeah, with those interior guys, they have to get sacks, which is really unfair because it's not the number one priority of a defensive tackle. But you really have to get 5 or 6 just to be on the radar. And the way it is anymore, I mean, you're not going to, you can be the best run stuffer in the world. You're not going to get Pro Bowl votes if you don't have 5 or 6, maybe even, eight sacks. So I'm not sure he's that kind of player. I think he's a really good player, really solid. Then we saw the last 6 weeks last year or so, that second half of the year, he really started to come into his own. So it could happen, like you said.
He ended up with 4.5 sacks last year, and we remember
Right.
how slow of a start he got off to.
Yeah. If he gets in that 6 to 8 sack range, he certainly would be in the mix.
Yeah. And then the last one on my list is Josh Sweat, 6 sacks in 14 games last year. You just don't know about the opportunity for him because you have Graham and Barnett and now Ryan Kerrigan in the mix. But if Sweat does what he did in those games and you extrapolate it and look at what he could do in a bigger role, then it's possible he can hit double digits and make a Pro Bowl.
And the same goes for Barnett, who
they're kind of in the same boat.
Yeah. You would think a first round pick, it was the 14th pick overall, you would expect him to be a Pro Bowler. He hasn't been yet, hasn't been close. So I think out of that group, if I was going to rank them, I would put Goddard first, just because I think he's already really close.
I think he's a Pro Bowl talent right now.
I agree. And I think especially if Zach Ertz, the odds are he's not going to put up. I mean, he's been a perennial Pro Bowler. So if you take him out of the picture, he'll probably be in the AFC anyway, even if he does have a big year. I'm just not sure those numbers. They're back to doing AFC, NFC, right? Not like the Deion Sanders team and the Josh Perkins team, whatever it was. But,
AFC, NFC, yeah.
So, I mean, I think he's right there. If he can stay healthy, he's gonna be in the 700-800 yard range. I just be surprised if he's not. So I put him first. I'd put Jalen Hurts second, just because he's gonna pile up big numbers. He's gonna be the league's gonna love him. TV's gonna love him. The networks are gonna love him. He's a great story. Not the no primetime games might hurt him. You could see him making a big deal about him if he was playing a lot of primetime games. But I just think he's the kind of player that he's going to rush for 700-800 yards. He's going to throw for probably 4,000 yards. They're going to be behind a lot, I think. I'm not sure this defense is going to be shutting a ton of people down this year. I think and he's got better weapons. I just think he's going to. Now, whether he's the long-term answer, I don't know, but I think he's got a really good chance to put up those kind of numbers that get you to Hawaii. I would put Devontae Smith next. A lot of buzz around him, a lot of hype, and I just think he's gonna be really good. Miles, there's some really good running backs. It's a very competitive. You've got to really put up huge numbers. And I don't know if he'll do that in this offense. I don't know. I'd like to see him take that next step and be in that mix, be that kind of player. But I don't know if that'll happen.
Do you agree with me that he's talented enough?
Absolutely.
To do it?
Yeah. But like you said, got to stay on the field. That's a big thing for him.
Everyone kind of thought he was going to take that jump last year, and then he was hurt in training camp, and he just never seemed to get over it. But
again, it was I try not to draw any conclusions about anyone on offense last year because there's such a train wreck in every way, play calling, O-line, quarterback play, everything. So I think he's on the doorstep of it. Can he take that next step? Is going to be big. You don't have, I guess, Hargrave and Sweat are your defensive guys. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else on defense. I mean,
thought about
Alex,
putting Singleton on there, but I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah, it's really tough because he's not going to be a guy that's going to have a ton of interceptions. He'll get some sacks just on sheer effort, but I mean, he's not going to be a Pro Bowler. Um, so I think you pretty much covered the guys that I would include.
And this is first time Pro Bowler, so we're not like I didn't include Slay, who's made a Pro Bowl but not here.
Right. Right. Yeah. So defensively, I'm not sure there's anybody else. I would add Barnett to the list.
Mm-hmm.
Just you think one of these years he'd get 13 sacks and be that kind of player, but he just hasn't put it together. I never would have guessed after 4 years he'd have 19 and a half sacks. I liked him as a player. He works hard. He plays hard. He does all the things that you would think. I'm not sure he has the assortment of moves that you really need to consistently beat the best offensive tackles. I'd like to see him add some to his repertoire. Maybe Tracy Rocker's a guy who can help him do that. I don't think it's helped him that he's had a different position coach every year, but those are good names. And I think especially those offensive guys, Goddard, Hurts, Miles, I think they all have a chance.
That's the exciting thing is when I was putting the list together, like the offensive names just came to me first. And I think there's legitimate shot with those guys to be really good players.
And even this is off the wall, but like if Travis Fulgham does what he did over 5 weeks, over 15 weeks, he's a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, I mean, he was on I made like a master list and then whittled it down.
I'm sure you did.
He
How many guys were on the first list? 40?
It was 90, and then I started to yeah. Yeah, he's never made
who's never made a Pro Bowl? Joe Flacco.
Is that right?
Joe Flacco is the NFL record holder for most career starts, wins, passing yards, touchdowns, and completions by a quarterback who's never made a Pro Bowl.
I didn't realize that.
You didn't read my 10 observations this week.
I did not. I was at a wedding all weekend.
Oh, so my 10 observations that's been up since Sunday. And today's Tuesday, but you were at a wedding Friday. No, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. I mean, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is second on most of those lists. And I think Craig Morton is second on a couple of them. But Joe Flacco is basically the most accomplished quarterback, and he won a Super Bowl. There's not a lot of quarterbacks that have won a Super Bowl that have never made a Pro Bowl. I mean, Nick Foles made a Pro Bowl. So he's the most accomplished quarterback ever to never make a Pro Bowl.
I would have guessed he would have been in there at one point.
You would have thought. I mean, he's always been okay. He's just never.
When you play that long and you start that many games, you figure. And we talked about how quarterbacks drop out of that game. You'd figure at some point he'd end up.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I started. When you get to like 7 observations and 10 observations, you're like, I'm just never going to find another observation. And you start looking at like different stats and stuff. And I was looking at Flacco's career. I mean, his best year was he always threw a lot of interceptions. So he's never had single digit interceptions. He's never thrown 30 touchdowns. He threw for 4,000 yards once, 2016, but he had 20 touchdowns and 15 picks. He's never had a passer rating over, he had 93.6 back in 2010. That might've been his best year. 25 touchdowns, 10 picks, threw for 3,600 yards. 62%. So he's always been just okay.
Yeah, that's just okay. Yeah.
But you would think like, a bunch of AFC guys would have gotten hurt and he would have had a chance, but especially the Super Bowl season. Well, back then you could go. Now you can't if you make the Super Bowl, but there's something to ask him. You can ask him that next time we do a Zoom call with Joe Flacco. Joe, you're the most accomplished quarterback ever to never make a Pro Bowl.
I'm sure that'll go over well. That was why it was so cool last year to see Brandon Graham make it. It's rare to see a guy that deep in their career, who's been good his whole career, finally make a Pro Bowl. It's kind of cool to see.
He was the oldest first-time Eagles Pro Bowler since Evan Mathis. Kind of a similar career in a lot of ways.
In a way, yeah.
Evan Mathis just had to go to like 6 different teams to find a spot.
I'm trying to think of like who that candidate on this team would be. Maybe Rodney McLeod.
Yeah, he'd be the guy.
Like,
I think, but he might. We don't even know if he's going to be ready to start the season.
Yeah.
and they just don't have that many older players left, which is a
That's
good
true.
thing.
I
Yeah.
left Samalu off my list.
You had him on your list a few years ago.
Yeah, I thought he was ready to take a jump. It's tough though, and even if you take a jump as an offensive lineman, you don't get the recognition until like you do it 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row. So it just
Yeah.
takes a while.
I remember with Jermaine Mayberry, and he was similar. He had gotten benched. He was considered a first round bust. They tried him at guard, and he actually played well. And Peter King, our friend Peter King, wrote a big blurb in his what was then Monday morning quarterback, and no longer is, about Jermaine Mayberry and speculating about he'll go to his first Pro Bowl, and that really like set it in motion. Like you need that as an interior lineman, or no one's going to notice. But like once Peter, like that's the clout that Peter wields. Like once everybody read that, they all voted for him.
And now, as much as some people kind of rag on Pro Football Focus, it has really helped because it's given stats to positions that don't have stats.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it's helped to at least some have some way to quantify how good an offensive lineman is. And they don't know necessarily the assignment or the goal of the play, but you kind of get it. Like you can kind of see who's blocking well when you look at every play and grade them on it. So I think that's helped too. And it's helped players here. I mean, they loved Evan Mathis. That I think they helped Evan Mathis get to his Pro Bowls. They
yeah.
loved Brandon Brooks and Jason Kelsey. Like them, that's an interesting story at some point. How much Pro Football Focus has helped Eagles offensive linemen get recognition, because a guy like Jason Kelsey just you see the big play, but he's not a prototypical center. So watching him win play after play when they're asking to do different things than other teams ask their center to do, I think it's really helped.
I do think Kelsey's a guy that stands out more than most centers, just because you see him down the field ahead of the play. I mean, I don't know how he does that.
But it took him a while too, because being a 6th-round pick.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There was the one year he made All Pro and didn't even make the Pro Bowl, which is crazy. I think there's been 2 years that's happened with him.
Yeah, and me and him joke because his Pro Bowl years before the last Pro Bowl he made were his worst years, like in his recent career. And he always jokes about it. He's like, I keep going to the Pro Bowl in my bad years. I don't know what's going on. But that's kind of the thing with linemen. Like they get the recognition a year later for the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
All pros a little bit better.
Yeah. That's a good list, though. It's a good list.
We wanted to talk about Jalen Reagor.
I have one more guy I'm going to throw out there. It just occurred to me. Landon Dickerson.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Who knows? But not a lot of rookies. But I mean, if something happened,
there were just too many variables to put in.
Yeah, I mean, he'd have to A, be healthy, B, stay healthy, and C, an interior lineman would have to get hurt, and 4, he'd have to. I went A, B, C, 4. He'd have to play. He'd have to play at a high level. But it's not completely off the wall, because I think if he does play, if he is healthy and he does play, I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, but he'll also miss, I would think, a lot of practice time. Yeah. Maybe he'll be ready for training camp. Who knows? But that's kind of a stretch for me as a rookie.
It's a stretch, but I also think he's a guy that, because of where he went to school and because he was a high pick.
There's a high profile.
There's going to be a buzz about him if he does play. It's a reach, but I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah. The one guy I left off the list, who maybe I shouldn't, was Jalen Reagor, because it was a disappointing rookie season, but he has talent. He was a 1st-round pick. And we talked about him a little bit last week, but we wanted to get a little deeper into what Aaron Moorhead said about social media. And this also applies to Andre Dillard, who you can argue has gotten farther along in his understanding of how to deal with it than Jalen Reagor. Andre Dillard said, I deleted social media. I realized it wasn't helping me. And for a bunch of different reasons. He said one was like, I noticed I was like wasting an hour scrolling through my phone, which I think a lot of us are guilty of. I'm guilty of. I hate on Sunday, I get my iPhone report of like how much time you spent on your phone. It's like, man, I wasted a lot of time this week. That was part of it. But like the bigger thing with him and other players is the criticism that you see on your phone, and
Wait, can
it's
you hang on?
tough.
Hang on. I just got to return this tweet. Hang on a second.
It's tough, man. Like I, I don't know how I would handle it being a 21-year-old kid. Like put yourself in Jalen Rager's shoes last year. He wants to be great. Like he wants to be a good player. It's not like he's not trying. He's getting hurt. Things are piling up on him. And then he goes on Twitter and he's got people calling him a bust, and they're sending him Justin Jefferson's stat line. It's got to be tough.
Yeah, and he was 21. I mean, it's. I think Twitter and social media. You would think he'd be a little more savvy because his dad played in the league. His dad played before social media, but he's. I think he's a very sensitive kid. He's very prideful, and it's easy to say just ignore it, but it's hard to do that. And I mean, we get people on Twitter ripping us, and it took me a while. I'm not comparing myself to Jalen Reagor, but it's not easy to sit there and have these people just blasting you for some opinion and taking personal shots at you. And it took me a while when Twitter was just kind of starting out to just understand this. Don't take it personally. Don't even think about it. And he's got to get to that point. And Aaron Moorhead's understands that part of his job as receivers coach is to help him get there. And, on the one hand, he said he doesn't think it affected him on the field, but he went to through great detail to explain how important it is for him to get beyond that and to focus on what's really important and to not worry about what people that don't know what he basically said there's people on social media that don't know what they're talking about. That's what he said, to tune them out and don't even spend the time. And I really do think it's something that can help Andre Dillard in a couple ways. A, you're more focused on the game and your play, and B, just the time, like he said, is time that you can spend in your playbook instead of scrolling through your phone. And I think those are lessons that Jalen Reagor hopefully is in the process of learning. But he's such a young kid. I mean, he is 22 now. He's in year 2. And he's got to learn to tune that stuff out. Because I think it does affect him on the field.
It does. And I part of me wonders if there's a chance he could use it. It seems like he's trying to do that now. Like there was, when we talked to him, he was like, keep that same energy if you want to talk about me now, which, hey, like if he has that ability to say, I want to see this, I want to see people saying bad things about me because I know they won't be doing it in a year. Like maybe there's something to that. Like maybe, but I think you have to be a really strong-minded person to only channel that into a good place.
Yeah.
That's like me. I know I can't do that.
Yeah.
But I understand that about myself, and I'm a lot older than Jalen Reagor. It took me a long time to get that, and I don't want to compare. We're not comparing ourselves to these athletes because they get it on a whole different level. But I think he has to understand that about himself. Like, can he read it and just either let it kind of roll off his shoulder, or say, yeah, I'll remember that comment. And when I catch 3 touchdowns in week 2, I'll say, hey, how about now? I don't know how. He just has to know himself. He has to know, can he do that? And I don't know the answer to that. Only he knows the answer to that.
I think it's really hard to do. I don't know how you go out there if your focus is on proving people wrong as opposed to running this pattern and working on this cornerback and learning how to high point the ball. I mean, all these things that go into it's such a cerebral position, and I don't know how you can focus on what's important if you're, I'm going to show him, if that's even anywhere near your conscious mind. I don't know how you do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like, he's running a 10-yard out and he's like, wacky man 555 said this about. I don't think that's what that's not what I mean. But If it gives him a little motivation, like to compile it in his head and think like people are doubting you, and he knows that people are doubting you. I see it. People are doubting me collectively. I'm gonna channel that into working out more or staying after practice because I want to be like some great players do that. There's plenty of great players who have channeled criticism, and I just think you have to. It's on an individual basis, and I don't know if it's the healthiest thing for someone in his position, but we'll see.
Yeah. He's got some talent.
Yeah, he does.
I'm always so glad when my buddy Dale here visits me in Nashville.
Heck yeah, man, I love this town.
I know. Sweet country music.
The hospitality.
Good manners.
Aggressive driving.
Yeah, great. What?
Yeah, the insane speeds. Crashes. Hot-headed drivers, man. It's awesome.
You're talking about NASCAR coming to Nashville.
That's right, man. I didn't come here just to see you.
Of course not.
NASCAR's coming to Nashville, June 20th on NBCSN.
All right. The last thing we just thought it'd be fun, since we talked to all the Eagles position coaches last week, to just kind of look back at some of our favorite assistant coaches. And we talked to one of them last week, Jeff Stoutland, who we went on about for a while. Who's another name of a position coach or an assistant coach that you just really enjoyed covering and listening to and watching coach?
Yeah, I mean, people are probably sick of hearing me talk about Harbs, but he was a guy that he was like the first assistant coach, and he got here in 98. I mean, every day after practice at Lehigh, we just talk. We just talk about, I mean, he would come off the field and, we'd start out talking about, whether this guy, what he can do and what, what kind of player he is. And we ended up just talking and, got to know him and, became close and just, I think, an incredible coach. You knew he was going to be a head coach somewhere. I thought it'd be in a college. But even as a special teams coach, he just came across as an incredible leader, motivator. People gravitated toward him, and I just feel so lucky. I've gotten to know him, and I think he's one guy that I remember one time at Lehigh. He said, "Rube, I have no music here. I have no music in my CD player. Can you lend me some? I know you're a big music guy. Can you lend me some CDs?" And this is before like you could put like 20 CDs on a flash drive and just give it to someone or email them MP3s or something. So, I put together like some Santana, some Tom Petty, stuff I thought he would like. He's a big classic rock guy. And then like I subversively snuck in some like Buzz Ziem or something, like some Philly bands and Flight of Mavis and stuff that he liked. So somewhere down in Baltimore right now, there's a Super Bowl winning future Hall of Fame coach that's got a Buzz Ziemer CD in his.
It's probably he's not listening to the Cats soundtrack.
Harbs is a big musical guy. Yeah, he likes musicals. So Harbs is one guy for me.
Yeah, I get that. I obviously haven't been around as long as you, but we had the O-line coaches in this town have been really good. Howard Mudd was just funny to be around. And then before that, Juan was great too. I mean, Juan was so good at explaining things. And he's passionate. Like we talk about Stout's passion. Juan's right there in terms of passion. Like you get him going about O-line play. He gets revved up, man.
Did you ever hear about the time when the Eagles drafted Trey Thomas in 98 and Juan took all the beat writers up to a film room and put on tape of Trey in college? And who was the guy? There was a first round pick. Was it Greg Ellis? I think that Trey had gone up against, and I think Greg Ellis was. This is a long time ago. I think they came out the same year. I think Greg Ellis played in North Carolina, and was a first round pick of the Cowboys, and had a good career. Had like 80 sacks, but he wanted to show us video or tape of Trey playing against Greg Ellis in college. We all went up to a little film room at the vet on the 4th floor, and he put on tape of Trey, and he's narrating it. And he's like, "Oh, watch this play. Bam, pow." And he's like, it's like Batman, like when they have bam, pow, like those signs that come up. And it was so much fun. But yeah, talk about, I mean, he was screaming. He's like giving us play-by-play of this highlight reel of Trey Thomas playing against Greg Ellis. It was an amazing moment.
Yeah, a few years ago, the last time I actually talked to Juan, I was doing that Jason Peters story. It was a 10-year anniversary of that trade, which is one of the greatest trades in team history. And I called him. He didn't know I was calling. He talked to me for like 45 minutes about getting a chance to see Peters on tape, and then him telling Andy like he's doing everything wrong. He's going to be incredible. Like, let me get my hands on him. Let me get my hands on him. He's going to be a great player.
When I did, I was doing a book signing in Morristown at the Barnes and Noble there when I did my book with Sal, the most overrated and underrated players, coaches, moments, and teams in NFL history. And we're doing a book signing, and all of a sudden Juan comes up. And he's like, "Ooh," I'm like, "Juan, I really appreciate you coming out here, man. Here's, you don't have to buy the book. Here's the book. We'll sign it for you. Really appreciate the support." And he says, "Thanks, but I just came because my son's got math tutoring here tonight."
That's funny. Any other assistant coach before we wrap this up? That really
Sean McDermott is a guy who I always thought a lot of. I understand why Andy fired him. It was probably the right thing to do. It was an impossible situation to follow in Jim Johnson's shoes. He's a young guy. I think it was hard for him to win the respect of the players, but he was a great coach. And you can see now, I mean, he's got, you look at that defense, you look at that Bills team, and, they play the game the right way. They're physical, they're smart. He's a hell of a coach. He's a really good head coach. And it's just a great guy. I ran into him in the tunnel when the Eagles played the Bills in 19, that game they won out in Buffalo. And, he sees me and he comes over and starts asking about my parents, my family. I mean, there's not a lot of guys who do that. So I'm a big fan. I think Ron Rivera, a lot of those Andy Reid guys, Ron Rivera is one of the best guys I've ever been around. I'm trying to think if there's any guys from the early days. There really wasn't, they were, because I guess they were all older, like in the Buddy years, the Kotite years. They were all older guys. Kotite's assistants were all like in their 90s.
Yeah. You covered Wade. Wade was fun.
I covered Wade at the very beginning when I was just starting out. I never really got to know him like you did. Good guy. He's got to be one of your favorites.
Oh yeah, he's just fun to be around. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I mean, I think I've been lucky to be around. I mean, all those Andy Reid guys, every one of them. Steve Spagnuolo is a guy I never really got to know. I mean, didn't dislike him or anything, but for whatever reason, never really got to know him. But all those other guys, I mean, even like a guy like Shermer, who we think, is it's just so dry and quiet, doesn't say anything. He was a really good dude. And Brad Childress, good dude. All them Andy Reid coaches were I really liked a lot.
Yeah. And more recently, I really enjoyed being around Frank Reich.
Yeah.
You could see how a players thought of him, pretty early.
Carson Walsh, enjoyed my time with him.
All right. He just got a job, I think.
Did he really?
Yeah, I think I read that somewhere. Yeah.
Which high school?
If you enjoyed the Eagle Eye podcast, rate, subscribe, YouTube, click the stuff, you know what to do. Rube, did you see that guy who got like half swallowed by a whale?
Saw that.
That's the weirdest story I've ever heard.
That's up
there. Can you
there.
imagine that?
I was trying to, and I really can't.
I mean, I'm happy he's okay. That's the greatest story anyone has. A whale swallowed me and spit me out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like something that would happen in a musical.
All right. That'll do it. For Rube, I'm Dave. We'll talk to you guys soon.